Is recorded. All right, good afternoon. This is the Wednesday, November 10th meeting of the Design and Project Review Committee. We do have a quorum. Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules to allow participation either electronically or by telephone.
Second.
Bill Griffith, please call the roll.
Knighton,
Aye.
Schnur,
Aye.
Biggs, Laura,
Aye.
Cano,
Aye.
Eckersberg,
Aye.
Vanetta,
Aye.
Tristan,
Aye.
Frank,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
and Eschbach.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Meeting minutes, November 3rd, 2021 meeting minutes will be placed on the November 17th meeting agenda for approval. So there are no meeting minutes. Next up is old business 1028 Chicago Avenue sign variation. Stephanie Thalen, applicant, submits for sign variation to install an illuminated wall sign at a height of 29 feet 6 inches where 15 feet 6 inches is allowed by sign regulation section 4-10-9-8H and not facing the public thoroughfare per section 4-10-3 Oscar Asparian Rugs in the C1 commercial mixed use business district. Stephanie, are you on, or somebody from Asparian Rugs? Okay, well, let's go to the next item and then we'll hold this to the end in case she arrives to the meeting. New business, 1414 Church Street, recommendation to ZBA. Daniel Tornheim, applicant, submits for a major variation requesting a rear yard setback of 3 feet where 30 feet is required, section 6-8-2-8, A4 building lot coverage of 38.1% where 30% is permitted, and impervious surface coverage of 49% where 45% is permitted, in order to construct an addition to the existing principal structure in the R1 single family residential district. The zoning board of appeals is the determining body in this case. Okay, before we launch into this, Cade, you've worked on this, right?
Yeah, correct. I mean, I help guide the applicant through the HPC process.
Okay, and then Katie Ashbaugh, you've worked on this as well? Okay.
Yes.
So why don't you translate for everybody else what I just said when I read into the record that information?
So Cade worked on this with regard to the certificate of appropriateness that's required from the Preservation Commission. And this also requires zoning variations. So essentially they have a non-conforming detached garage in their rear yard to the south of the existing house. They're proposing to demolish that garage and build an addition to the existing house so that the garage is now attached. The attached garage will make the principal structure 3 feet from the rear lot line, where a setback of 30 feet would be required. Let me see if I can zoom in on the plat to help with this a little bit. So here's the existing detached garage. It's less than 3 feet from the south lot line, which is non-conforming. And then they're proposing to, I think this is the better sheet, demolish that and then attach the garage. And it would also be a 2-car garage. So right now there also there's open parking pads to the west of the house that were actually denied prior, and it appears that at some point the property owners installed them without a permit. So the impervious surface was not what we would consider legal non-conforming. I spoke with the architect who will be presenting later, but he is now proposing to remove those. They weren't allowed regardless. but their impervious surface is still a little bit over what would have been allowed. And their building lot coverage is also exceeding the maximum permitted. So that's kind of a summary without the exact math, but the architect Dan Turnheim is also on the call, and he can perhaps explain the need for this improvement and what the homeowners are hoping to do.
Okay.
Do you guys want me to go through the proposal? I don't want to step in.
Sure, and then
incorrectly here.
maybe before you do that, Cade, why don't you explain what happened last night?
Yeah, sure. I guess the only other thing I'd point out that Katie didn't mention is the lot is significantly substandard. I think it's in the 4,000 square foot range. And this parcel, it was actually subdivided at one time from the adjacent parcel to the east, sometime in the late 1800s. And our records initially show that it was constructed as an accessory building for that home on 1632. And then at some later time was converted to single family use, and it's seen pretty significant alterations, primarily in the 1950s. It is a significant structure. It was built in the 1890s by Myron Hunt, pretty significant architect. And it's in the arts and crafts style. The Preservation Commission last night, they reviewed the application, including the application for major zoning relief. They ultimately made the decision to give a recommendation of no recommendation. So neither a recommendation for nor against for the proposed zoning relief. They did approve the request for a certificate of appropriateness with conditions that the applicant reduce the depth of the proposed eaves, which were originally drawn to match the existing principal structure, I think around 2 feet in depth. Reducing those, they felt would provide an adequate relationship between this structure and then the proximate coach house to the south, which is also legally non-conforming. It's access stair, and then there's 2 canted balconies that are on the lot line. So that right now, I think if I remember correctly, the detached garage is less than a foot away from that structure. Where the 3 feet now with the proposed eaves, they felt like that would be a significant reduction. They did have some concerns with snow collection based on the roof pitch. So they also made a recommendation to find a solution for snow collection, which may include snow guards or roof clips. Other than that, ultimately, they determined the height of the proposed addition, including the roof pitch and ridge heights, were compatible with the coach house to the south. They also determined that the relationship between the two and the open space between as proposed, if they reduced the eaves, was appropriate. And finally, the scale of the structure, they also found to be compatible and appropriate. So I think in terms of recommendation, we started to kind of get in the weeds of what the need was or what the hardship was, and they ultimately determined that those kind of questions, including the alleged hardship, they were outside of their purview, and they wanted to defer that to the zoning board without a firm recommendation.
Thank you both. Dan, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, maybe we should take a look at Kate, if you can go to the site plan, because I think it's helpful to see, what the possibilities are in terms of the location of a garage on this property, which was one of our biggest struggles when the client came to me with, they say, I would love to, see if we could get a 2-car garage on this property, something similar to, the neighborhood. Most people have a 2-car garage. And I looked at it, and some of my initial thoughts were placing the garage in maybe the northeast quadrant of the property. But the problem is that the house is just under 19 feet away from the property line. Can't really get a good 2-car garage in there in that distance. It would require a curb cut off at Church Street, which ultimately I thought probably isn't the best solution. I've got an alley I can work with. So I also thought about placing the garage in the south east quadrant, but that's basically the yard. I mean, that's where the kids play, that's where the family hangs out, that's where their patio is. So it just kind of ate up all the yard space, and it was closer to the neighbor's principal structure to the east. So I thought maybe the best opportunity would be to attach the garage to the principal structure, and where I'm proposing it now, which is the southwest quadrant of the property. One of my concerns was, you know, I wasn't going to place the garage directly on top of the existing foundation of the one-car garage. It's too close to the property line. It's like 0.77 feet away or something like that. So it's under a foot away. And I thought, you know, just for life safety, I'm gonna at least give it some buffer. I'll set it back off the property line by 3 feet. So that way I can at least I can get light and vent. The next door neighbor can have light and vent, no problem. The emergency personnel can get through the property through that 3 foot setback. And I can get a 20 by 20 foot garage in there without taking away too much of the existing interior space of the house. And it worked. It's tight, but it worked. So that was, I thought, our best proposal. So I just thought I'd add that information for you guys.
Great. Let's stop here. Does anyone have any questions? Edgar, are you putting your hand up?
I should just mention, Johanna, that the neighbor to the east and the south, that property owner, they did come to the commission meeting last night, opposed to the project. There were some concerns just with the proximity of the structure, as well as the height of the roof compared to what's existing.
Other questions or comments?
I guess related to that, the DAPR committee should have received the letters of support from other neighbors via email today. So it seems like the neighborhood is pretty split on this project.
Katie, I have a question. Do you know how many letters of support we received on the project?
Only the 3 that you provided. I have not received anything else in writing.
Oh, okay. All right, thanks.
Hey, Dan, why don't you speak really quickly to your ideas for fire rating this structure that might be relevant to this body?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think that's a great question, Kate. I mean, the principal structure is, I think it's a frame structure. It's like a type 4. So it's combustible. My thought was, I mean, I know a standard is probably 5 feet from the property line in terms of, keeping a structure distant from, other structures. I'm at 3 feet, which gives us some buffer, but my thought was I could make the garage structure like a type 3, which is, like an exterior protected. It could be, like a CMU structure, clad in the shingle, cedar shingle, so it still look like the main house, but it would have a little bit higher fire resistance rating, at least for the walls. The eaves I could probably do is non-combustible as well. Where setting the eaves, I'm cutting them back up another foot, so they don't overhang as much as the existing house does. So that gives us a little bit of, leeway too. And I think that, with a little bit higher fire resistive construction, it might maybe it appease the neighbor. I don't know if that makes any difference or not. I mean, their coach house to the south looks like a type 3 structure. I mean, it's got exterior masonry, so I presume it is. I don't know if it's a type 3 or a type 3A or B, but it's still pretty good. So that was my thought, is just to try to kind of bring up the level of safety a little bit if that was a concern. So yeah, those were my ideas.
I'd like to comment on the eaves. The requirement for these eaves, because it's a principal structure and the required yard is 30 feet, the permitted encroachment is 10%. And technically the eaves are compliant, but if this were an accessory structure, the eave would be limited to 6 inches with this 3-foot setback. So just something to note there. So no zoning relief is required for the eaves to be what they are, but we often see detached garages and they do need to reduce the eaves to be 6 inches. So something for you to note, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to bringing back the eaves even more. I mean, I don't want to mess up the look of the structure. I don't think it will, because it's the eaves on the principal structure are pretty big. The porch in the front is that's where I took the eave dimension from to emulate to the garage. So it's like a 2-foot right now overhang. If it's at a 6-inch overhang, I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I don't know what historic preservation would say, but I'm okay with it.
So barring any other questions, I'd like to make a motion to send a positive recommendation to ZBA for 1414 Church Street. Oh, there is one thing I just thought of, and I apologize, but I just want to note that downspouts have to be sort of on your property. They can't be sending water to other people's properties. So just to be very cognizant, particularly at the edge of the garage, of where the downspouts are going.
Yeah. Can I just comment real quick, Laura? I was going to
Sure.
mention, I tried as best I could in the rendering to show that the downspout splashes on grade, but towards the alley. That was my best shot at trying to get water off that roof in an appropriate manner. I don't know if it's real super clear. It's maybe hard to see. I don't know.
So it may be necessary. I'm just thinking, based on the site plan, you may be wanting to send downspouts back to the yard. I know that causes the yard to flood somewhat, but the issue with sending it directly to the alley is we typically like them to be offset from the alley. I'm not sure you're offset from the alley that far. So then it would create like an icy patch.
Oh, yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, I think that, splashing the downspout like to the east into the yard, I mean, it's fine for us. We don't mind that. It's not gonna cause, I mean, there's a stoop there with a door, but I think it's up high, so I don't think it's gonna, really affect things. It's probably, if it splashes on grade at the east of the proposed garage, it'll just drain into the grass. So that's cool. That's fine by us.
Okay.
And also as a note on that, I don't believe that's not a public alley there either. That's a private alley owned by the homeowners on the Ashland side.
Yeah,
I think
sorry, go ahead.
there's just that is a source of what neighbors complain about typically, is that your downspouts are impacting them in some way, whether it's through iciness on the alley or through being on their property. So just need to be cognizant of that.
Yeah, no problem.
Laura or does anyone on the committee have any ideas for snow accumulation? I know that came up during the HPC meeting due to the pitch of the roof and the proximity to that structure.
More of an Edgar question. I don't have any concerns about snow.
No, no suggestions from here, especially if that's all private.
I do have one quick question. Sorry, go ahead, Jessica. Were you going to comment on that?
I wasn't going to comment on the snow, so if you're going to comment on the snow, you should go ahead.
Oh, you can make your comment.
I was just going to say, it's not clear to me what the hardship is. That there's been a conversation around the other neighbors have 2-car garages. That's not a hardship. And so the hardship is not clear to me.
Hey, do you want me to talk about that at all? I'm not sure how to respond, to be honest with you.
something we really cover in this committee?
I think there's some benefit in providing more distance between the coach house, the adjacent coach house, and the garage. I think the current situation is clearly not ideal, and I think providing more space, whether it's just 2 feet, I do think there's some benefit in
Well,
that.
more space could be added by just having a one car that's attached. So eliminating, there's not a need or a hardship for a 2-car garage. You could create even more space between the buildings by only having a 1-car garage.
I think that, Jessica, you're correct that, the degree of the variation that they're requesting with the rear yard is pretty large, but the detached garage would still need to, if they were to not attach it and then maintain a 1-car garage, it still would need to be 10 feet from the principal structure, but also 3 feet from their south lot line. Obviously there's not a site plan for that right now, but it would still need a variation for that, although it would be a minor variation. And I think the existing detached garage is closer than 10 feet as it is, so it's non-conforming. And if they were to attach it, it still would probably need a major variation just because there's technically no rear yard. But I would concur that the degree of the variation and the need for a 2-car garage could be explored a little further by the applicant.
On the other hand, the applicant is investing a significant amount of money to get a 2-car garage, but they're also removing the parking pads, which will improve the impervious surface situation. And so to me, rather than resist this proposal, I'd rather support it, even though it gives them a 2-car garage, in order to allow more green space for water infiltration.
I agree about the need for more green space and water infiltration. I would just remind everyone that those pads were put in without a permit. So it feels like they did something illegally and they're getting a trade-off to get a 2-car garage.
I don't know exactly when those parking pads were put in. I don't think the current owner did that. Not to say that relieves them of some kind of duty or negligence, but it wasn't our intention to have the pads or want the pads, to be honest with you. It's not really ideal to park there in the first place, but there's not really that much in the way of opportunity to park on the property. I know that I think I remember that, like a single family residence requires 2 off-street parking spaces. That's challenging with even the existing, the way that the existing property is configured, given that we've got parking pads that aren't allowed. I got a 1-car garage that probably will fit only a Model T Ford and nothing else. So it's just a challenging site. So I just wanted to add that.
I would note that the Plata survey provided with this shows the concrete parking pad, and that's from 2018. I'm not sure when your clients acquired the property, but that concrete pad was at least there in 2018, and then it's since been expanded to show the gravel, which I think I included photos of that in the packet. So I guess to your point, just depends on when they technically did acquire the property, and they didn't install the concrete, but they did certainly expand it.
Yeah, I'd have to ask the owners. I think they said they purchased it a couple of years ago. I could be wrong. I don't want to speak out of turn on that, but they haven't owned it for 15 years or anything like that. So yeah, I think they inherited at least the concrete. I'm not sure how the gravel got there, but it's possible they did that. I'm not sure.
I
Is
don't
there
want to speak
anyone,
up.
before we make a motion, is there anybody from the public who'd like to make a comment?
Hi, I'm Patty Lee King. I'm not, I mean, I don't know if I'm considered the public, but I am the owner with my husband Corey, and I can answer the question about that's been asked if it's helpful.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, so we purchased the house in April of 2018. Both the concrete and the gravel were in place when we purchased the car, or when we purchased the home. And we did not know, I guess we could have looked into it at the time, but we did not know that they were illegally done until Dan submitted the plan to your office.
Google Street View looks like that some work was done in somewhere between 2007 and 2011. If you go through the old Google Street Views to the property. Just FYI. So I think that, I mean, my takeaway is I think this lot is a very strange shaped lot. It's a challenging lot to do much on. There's not street parking immediately in front of the property. It's a busy street. There's a bike lane, so it's obviously well served by other transportation options. And it's near down. I think I said it's near downtown, so it's close to public transportation. But as we've learned in other properties, 2-car garages are often desired and part of the new construction and what is expected in Evanston for new projects. So so I don't know. I think that the lot creates a little bit of the hardship here as much as anything else. So I don't know if anyone else has any other comments, or if Laura, if you had a motion.
I would still make a motion for a positive recommendation to ZBA for 1414 Church Street.
I'll second.
Great. Anybody, any other conditions with Laura? Were there any conditions with the drains that you wanted to put the downspouts?
We can add that as a condition, that the drains for the garage addition are directed to the yard rather than straight to the alley.
Okay, Michael Griffith, please call the roll.
Biden,
Aye.
Schnur,
Aye.
Biggs,
Aye.
Cano,
Aye.
Eckersberg,
Aye.
Vanetta,
Aye.
Tristan,
Aye.
Hank,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
and Eschbau.
I'd like to abstain since I'll be taking this to the zoning board of appeals.
Motion passes.
Okay, great. All right, just double checking. There's nobody here for 1028 Chicago Avenue. Okay,
Motion to adjourn.
is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 There will definitely be a Dapper next week. And then we're off for 2 weeks. And then there's like one more before maybe 1 or 2 more before the end of the year. And then we move to Tuesdays at 2.
And starting in December, Chris Vanetta is no longer going to be participating, and Ron Papa, who is a CE2 at the water plant in the capital planning group, will be taking his place.
Great. Wonderful. All right, thanks everybody. See y'all later.
Thank you.